What's up guys, Vahlkx here, and today I'm going to go over my Hailey build. So the builds I'm going to be showing today are mainly going to be for bossing, so it's going to have both a gun build, which can also be flexed into mobbing, and also a sniper build. But without further ado, I'm going to get right into the build and kind of talk about every component and piece about the build and what you should be running for it. The very first thing I'm going to go over here is the catalyst slots I've put into my build so far. So right now this is a total of 13 catalysts. Realistically, you should probably only need like 11 or 12. I did, over catalyze one of them. I kind of messed up on that slot. But then kind of the additional catalysts were also me kind of future-proofing the build for, future transcendent mods for Hailey. But this is what I've got going if you do plan on kind of, following all the builds I've got going. All right, so for my very first build here, we're going to be going over the gun build, which is going to be made for pugs. And so with this one, the main focus on the gun build is going to be spamming our first ability here. And so I do have, a lot of cooldown stacked so that we kind of have the max cooldown here at the 1.5 seconds. And what this allows us to do is pretty much spam cryo rounds back to back to back with no problem. So we're going to have constant uptime of cryo rounds. And the reason you want to do that is because when you have cryo on the enemy and you shoot them, it will deplete a stack. But that stack that gets depleted will do 50% of the bullet damage. And so if it's critting or if it's a weak point on top of that, it's going to be doing a lot of additional damage over time. For the gun builds, I also want to mention that, I did go fully into cooldown to have 1.5 seconds because when I was testing 1.5 seconds and 2, it's a very minimal, difference. It's just half a second, but that half second will, build up over time. And so that could be you kind of missing out on a stack or two of cryo just over time, and of course that'll build up, and that's just damage that you're going to be missing out on. Now to talk about the mods in the build, for this pugging one, we're going to focus on survivability first. So right here we're going to have 2 HP mods, so we've got HP amp and increased HP. Following that, we also have increased defense to just have more DR in our build. Next up, I want to talk about the cooldown, and since we're kind of going for the max amount of cooldown we can get, we've got Nimble Fingers going as well as MP conversion for that one. And then on top of that, we have Focus on Chill and Focus on Dimension. And what's good about those two as well is that they're going to help just boost our damage, which is especially true for the first one. And again, if you're stacking the damage up or kind of scaling it up for the first ability, that will again add up over time, which is going to allow you to just do more DPS in general. Following that, we're going to have some skill cost reduction because as Hailey on this gun build especially, you're going to be, spamming your first ability. And on top of that, you're going to have your 3 just constantly on so that you can have max stacks for, high crit rate and, a little bit of bonus damage. And so for that one, we are running maximized conservation. On top of that, we are also going to have strong mentality. On this build right here, if you wanted to make it into like a mobbing build, a very simple thing you have to do is just go ahead and swap the second increased HP right here for just an MP collector. And if you're following my other builds, you could also just change the catalyst slot to, of course, reduce the slot amount right there. But very simple change to just do that for mobbing. For my second build here, it's going to be pretty much the same gun build that I just showed, but the only difference here is we're going to be completely taking out all the survivability mods. And so instead of having the double HP, we're going to have conditional recharge so that when we're using our skills, we do go, below 50%, which will help trigger Walk a Tightrope. And then on top of that, it'll also trigger the Annihilation set. And so all of those will kind of buff up your damage. And then speaking of, buffing up our damage, we just want to use Spear and Shield to just boost up our skill power a little bit so that our one spam does do, a little extra damage, which again, will just add up and just, help you do more damage throughout the whole fight. Now, my idea of stacking cooldown like this is kind of just my idea of really min-maxing the damage output I can do, because like I said, that half a second will maybe result in you kind of missing out on one stack, and that one stack could do like an extra 200k damage or like whatever it might be depending on buffs and debuffs. But I think cooldown stacking is kind of the way to go with this if you are doing a gun build, and so that is what I've kind of decided here. Now off to my third build here. This one will be using the Zenith sniper or her ultimate instead of a gun build, and so on this one we'll once again be focusing on some survivability. So we've got HP amp going right there, and on top of that we have spear and shield, but spear and shield is more important for this build because her modifier on both her sniper as well as her second ability already has a very high modifier, so spear and shield is going to be a lot more effective to actually boost the damage up. On top of just boosting more damage here, we're going to be using Chill Specialist instead of Focus on Chill, just to get the most amount of chill skill power we can get. On top of that, we'll be using Shot Focus again in this build, and the reason for that is because her skill power modifier is already so high that that 15% is not going to do anything at all, and if anything, you're just going to be doing more damage in general by using Shot Focus. For this build as well, we're going to continue using the cooldown mods, and that's because, you know, this is again focused more on group play and kind of pugging as well. So if you don't, you know, kill the boss right away, for example, if it's like Molten Fortress, you do have the cooldown there to just get your sniper back quickly. As you see here, it's going to be 9 seconds on that cooldown. And then again, that's what also allows us to kind of spam the cryo rounds here. It won't be as spammy as the gun build, but still there. And you do want to, you know, stack up the cryo to just get that bonus damage. With Hailey, you should always be having the third ability here just constantly up, because that's just free firearm crit rate and skill crit rate. And then on top of that, if it's at max stacks, that's just free additional damage. And so to really get 100% crit rate on Hailey, we'll be using skill insight here. And then combining that with front lines will give us a little bit of crit rate to just finish out the 3% that we would be missing if we weren't running front lines. And then to just help boost up more crit damage, we've got skill concentration for that. This build right now is pretty good for pretty much, you know, any boss in the game except for Gluttony. And the reason for that is because if you've played Gluttony, you'll kind of know that Gluttony has a very high skill crit resistance. And so even on 100% crit rate on Hailey, you're not going to be critting often. And that's just going to be a, you know, big damage loss right there, which is why I've kind of built up some gun builds for Hailey instead for Gluttony and, you know, possibly any bosses beyond that. So instead of having crit rate, you might want to look into more kind of building firearm attack, since that will scale better in damage. And in terms of like scaling better for damage, I want to add on that's mainly kind of for just boosting up kind of the base damage that you're doing, opposed to kind of, you know, relying on crit damage and the multipliers when it's not going to be applied on Gluttony. The very last mod that I'm going to be using is going to be multi-talented. So you could also use, you know, Dangerous Ambush, but the problem with that is you do have to wait for the boss to be immobilized to just, you know, actually benefit from it. But, you know, with multi-talented, you just pop the skill right there. The two main ones you're going to be using are obviously the Zenith Sniper and maybe the second one. But what that will do is just, you know, activate that singular right there for bonus attribute damage, which will, you know, just increase the damage or just all the bullets in the sniper. So it's going to be just more consistent overall, and that is why I kind of just do that instead. For this build, I also want to mention that you could switch out multi-talented for ambush. Of course, I think I mentioned it earlier, the problem with that is you have to wait for the boss to, you know, get it down in that immobilized state for the bonus damage to actually happen. Whereas, you know, multi-talented, it's consistent for all the bullets. There's no condition of, you know, having to wait for the boss to be downed. And, you know, like I said, ambush is more conditional. And also, like, the problem with it is that you're going to probably be using it to kind of fish out, you know, high damage numbers when the boss is immobilized. For example, if the boss is downed, you can't get out of the sniper state and just use your 2, which of course has a higher modifier. So that will just, you know, drastically increase with ambush to get like big numbers like 20 million plus. But again, that's not really needed. And it's not really practical in any bosses really, besides like Pyro. So for this Hailey build I have running on this boss scene one made for, you know, group play, this one will be having 8 shots in the sniper. And so in order to do that, you will have to be rolling 12% rounds on the piercing light, or, you know, whatever sniper you're using, but piercing light is the one you want to use. And then on top of that, you're going to be using 2 ammo mags right here. And then you're also going to have Slayer set. And so when you add up all the rounds per mag that all that gives, you will hit exactly 100%, which will give the 8 bullets in the sniper. For my final build right here, Again, this is going to be a more glass cannon one, similar to the gun build I have, where I have a plug-in and then kind of a pre-made one. So this could be for pre-mades, but honestly, it's not needed because Hailey will just obliterate any boss in general. But what this does is, again, it takes out all the survivability for more damage. And so instead of having HP, we are going to once again be doing conditional recharge, and then we're going to be using a walk and tightrope as well, just to boost up the skill power modifier, as well as firearm attack, because firearm attack right now is very strong for scaling Hailey's damage. And on top of that, this will proc the Annihilation set, which is what I do run for this build specifically. Because this build focuses on mainly just killing the boss as fast as possible before the enrage, we're going to be removing the cooldown. And so instead of having the cooldown, we're going to replace that for a half upgraded skill crit rate right there, just to make sure we do hit 100% for crit rate. And then on top of that, we're going to be using Glacial Sync right here, so this will just help boost the skill power a little bit right there. You might be wondering which weapon you want to use for Hailey for her Zenith sniper, and the reason for that is because her sniper will take the base damage of the equipped weapon and do more damage based off of that. And so what you want to be using is a sniper, because snipers scale better than something like a shotgun because they have a higher crit hit damage and weak point damage, and then on top of that they also have better crit rate. So when you are using Zenith, there are going to be two different numbers. One number will be the actual Zenith sniper with the skill damage, whereas the other one is going to be the firearm attack. Right now we do have two snipers in the game, and that's going to be the Piercing Light and the Afterglow. And the one you want to be using is Piercing Light without a doubt, and that's because the firearm attack is much higher. For example, that is 193k compared to Afterglow, which is 114k. So you're just going to be doing more damage in general just having Piercing Light instead. To stay on the topic of weapons, I'm going to quickly go over the weapons I do use. And so for both the gun and the sniper builds, I am going to be running Greg's. I've got the Enduring Legacy, and I also have the Piercing Light, for obvious reasons. It just has higher base damage to scale the ultimate for Hailey. The main weapon build I'm going to be going over is going to be the Piercing Light, but the one I want to touch up on is going to be the Greg's and the Enduring Legacy. And so I already have build videos out for those two. It's pretty much the same. So, the Greg's is the exact same. I haven't changed anything, and I am using RLF on it. And the reason I'm using RLF, or Real Life Fighter, is because even though the bombardments do deplete the stack, if you're constantly hitting the weak point on the boss, you should be forcing those stacks to accumulate. And you got to also keep in mind that Greg's is an RNG weapon. You're not going to be constantly proccing. And so when it's not proccing, that can build up to 4 stacks, 6 stacks, whatever. It can go up to 10. And when it does, proc at 10 or whatever, that's going to be 100% increase in damage. And those 7 bombardments that proc will be doing that extra damage. So that is why I do keep RLF there. It's why I think it's good. Because, other ones like Mental Focus, it's consistent, but you do have to wait for it to build up. And then I think the other one people use on Greg's is Fire Conductor. And the problem with that is you have to wait for the bombardments to proc and then actually hit the enemy. So, if they're kind of mobile and, you can't hit them, then they won't have the fire stack, unless you have a fire Descendant to apply fire on them to actually get the bonus damage, which is once again why I use RLF, because you can just force the stacks to do, more damage in general. For my Enduring, the build video that I have posted is pretty much the same thing that I'm running now. The only thing I changed because of the new catalyst system is I put an X slot where Mental Focus was, to just swap that out with Sharp Precision. And the reason for that is because Sharp Precision will kind of help just dish out more damage in a faster time because it does ramp up. The only reason I was running Mental Focus though was because at the time I was mainly playing Valby and using Enduring. And when you're playing Valby with Supply Moisture, you're gonna have to reapply abilities to get the buff. So that's why I had Mental Focus, just to keep the stacks. But Sharp Precision is a good change to have to just do damage. Finally, I can talk about the main weapon build I want to go over, which is going to be the Piercing Light. So for this one, I'm going to start off with the substats that actually do damage. And so on my Piercing Light, I have weak point damage, I have Colossus attack, and then I have the crit hit damage. So you want weak point and crit hit for sure, because those two are multipliers. So it's just going to help boost damage overall. And of course, having the Colossus one, same thing, it's just going to help boost that damage. But then the last one I have here is rounds per mag. Now for this one, if you are looking to get the 8 shots in combination with the Slayer set and having weapon mods that increase ammo size, which I'll go over later. That it will help boost everything on the ultimate to actually get the 8 shots for 100% mag size. Now, if you're actually looking to get the 12% on the mags, what I would suggest is instead of, rolling everything else and then trying to get the 12% and, spending 20 mats, just start off with the mags, try to get that one first, lock it in, and then try to get everything else. On my piercing light, I do have 2 different builds, and this is dependent on kind of the Hailey build I'm running. Because right now, the one that we're looking at, I use this one on the grouping one, which, uses the Slayer set to get the 8 shots in the Zenith sniper. And in order to do that, we are going to have to be running 2 mag mods. So we've got the purple mag going right there, and then we've got the blue one going. Following that, I'm going to quickly go over everything else because it's pretty basic for kind of modding a weapon. So we've got crit rate going, we've got crit hit damage, weak point damage, and then firearm attack. And then for the very last mod, I am using Special Sight. And the reason for that is because similar to multi-talented, Special Sight will just have more consistency with all the bullets just doing the same damage and high damage at that. So that is why I use it. On the second build here, I use this one on my glass cannon one where I kind of do as much damage as possible before the first phase. And so for this one, you cannot get 8 shots because you'll be running Annihilation instead of Slayer. So instead of having 2 mag mods, we're going to keep one on there just to make sure that we do get the 7 shots at least. And then we're going to be using just the Toxic Enhancement instead, just to, have a little bit bonus damage right there. And then instead of Special Sight, we've got Weak Point Expansion, again, just to make sure we just kill things as fast as possible. And Weak Point Expansion is perfect for that, just doing damage, a lot of damage at that, on that first shot, and then just finish up the boss with the, remaining bullets. For this build, I kind of misspoke earlier, but for this one, if you are using the blue one, it'll give you 6 shots on the Annihilation and like glass cannon build. But if you wanted to just keep, 7 shots, what you would do is just keep 2 mag mods there. It's not really needed because you'll probably be killing the bosses anyways, and the 6 shots that you get right here, and might as well have the Toxic just to boost up a little bit more damage. In the end, it's kind of up to you if you want to use weak point on both the builds, on one of the builds, or if you want to use Special Sight. That's just what I do right here and right now. For the reactors, I'm going to first talk about the one you want for the sniping builds. So you obviously want to have the piercing light mounting because piercing light has higher attack for just better damage scaling. And then you also want chill and singular to boost the damage on the 4th ability. Now for the substats, you for sure want the attack against the Colossus, but then for the next stat, which is again going to be a damage stat, there are different ones you can do. So you will want to get a crit hit damage one to obviously boost up crit damage. But again, the problem with that is Gluttony is resistant to crit. So you're not going to benefit out of that if you do plan on using it in Gluttony, which is why something else such as singular damage or chill damage would be good to just, again, boost the just pure damage rather than the crit damage. And you kind of want to go the order of first doing the singular and then chill, because if you focus on the singular aspect, it will scale slightly better than chill damage. So it's up to you to decide between those 3 in combination with Colossus. For the reactor on the gunning build and maybe the mobbing build, if that's something you're looking for, they're going to be using the same thing. What you're going to be using, again, is just chill skill power. And for that one, instead of singular, you're going to want dimension because the first ability scales off dimension. And then for the mounting, you can do Enduring Legacy or Greg's if you're looking to do, a yellow reactor. What I plan on doing is probably getting a purple one just to make sure that like when I'm swapping weapons, I still get the bonus skill power right there. But then for the, substats, the main thing you are looking for is going to be cooldown. And then at that point, it's up to you if you want to do like Colossus or Dimension or Chill Power just to boost it up a little bit as you're spamming your first ability there. And this kill cooldown can be any rarity. So if you use a blue one and you look at the cooldown here, it'll be 1.6. Or as if you used a purple one, it'll be 1.5. That 0.1 doesn't make too much of a difference from my testing. It's 0.1 second. So it's up to you if you want to use either or, but that is kind of my plan with the build so far. For the components, so right now I have Slayer equipped, and the Slayer set is going to be for the grouping build, and that is again for getting 8 shots, and then A nice thing about Slayer is that it will increase the skill power just to do more damage. For all the pieces, you're going to be looking for the max stat up. So you got HP, MP, defense, and shield. And for all those, you're going to want to get the MP recoveries. For my other build, which is, you know, the glass cannon one, we are going to be using Annihilation instead, so that when we are under 50%, we are stacking the firearm attack on the components as well as tightrope. And so once again, on this, you're going to be looking for max stats as well as the MP recovery. As for both of the gun builds, I do continue to use Annihilation just for the balance between, you know, the HP and defense. And then obviously when you're under 50, you do get the extra bonus to firearm attack. One last thing you want to keep in mind with Hailey is to keep your distance and if you want to do more damage. So if you look at her passive here, it's going to be a reference distance of 12.5. And so at 12.5 meters is when you get no decrease or increase her weak point damage. As you increase your distance, you're going to be doing more weak point damage, and that maxes out at 25 meters at a max of 50% bonus damage. And then as you get closer, it'll do the opposite from what I understand. So obviously you don't want to be close because you are going to be losing out on that weak point damage. So you just want to try to play far away and shoot the enemy. And a good way to just make sure is either have a sniper, which is kind of impractical, but the most effective thing is just look at the bottom right of her skills. You'll see a little circle there fill up as I move farther or move closer. So that is a good reference of kind of how far you are from the enemy if you are aiming in. I'm going to talk about the skill rotation on the builds. And so for both builds, you're going to always want to start off, you know, having V up. You're going to want constant stacks on that just so you're getting, you know, the most amount of crit rate on it as well as the bonus damage when it is at max. And then for the gun build, pretty simple. All you're doing is holding down your fire button and just spamming the first ability. And that's so you can make sure the cryo stacks are applied. And then as you're shooting, you are depleting the stacks and doing 50% more bullet damage from depleting it. For the sniper build, it's going to be the same thing. You start off with 3. And then I'm going to talk about kind of the least effective rotation to the most effective. And so starting with the least effective, this one you're going to want to have, you know, dangerous ambush equipped. And so what you're going to do against a boss is go into your sniper mode, down the boss, and when they're down, get out of your sniper, and you're going to use your second ability. That is going to scale hard with ambush, and obviously if it crits, it's going to do big damage. The next rotation you can do with this is when you're starting a boss fight, again, start with your 3, and then kind of right before the immunity phase ends, you want to time your second ability to get that off. It'll apply some cryo stacks. You go straight into your sniper mode, and while you're in this mode, you want to spam your first ability as you're shooting the boss, just to continue building up cryo stacks, continue doing a little bit extra bonus damage, and again, you're just doing big damage with the sniper. And finally, the most effective and easiest rotation is, you know, you start off at your 3, go into your sniper mode, and all you need to do is spam the first ability and time your first sniper shot when the first cryo bullet hits so that you do get the bonus extra damage. And you just continue spamming the cryo rounds and you continue shooting the boss with the sniper. Plain and simple. So that just about does it here for the build I'm running on Hailey. Now I will say that I did kind of over catalyze her right now, but I did that because I wanted to future-proof the builds for, you know, the upcoming transcendent mods that are going to be coming out for her. But I do have enough space to be adding those when they come out. But yeah, I hope this guide helped you guys out. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.